Confirm. Do I? Oh, I don't have to confirm. Okay. I guess because I confirmed earlier.
Yeah, I guess. All right. 3, 2, 1. Hey, podcasters, welcome back to Podcaster HQ. I have an amazing guest for you guys today. One of my oldest friends in podcasting, Mr. Super Joe Pardo.
Hey, Amy, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about podcasting and business and all the things that go in between that.
And I couldn't find someone better because you have been on my podcasting journey almost practically from the beginning of when I kind of started taking it seriously, for whatever that means. And so you have had your own journey with podcasting. So before we get too far, can you share a little bit about how you got into podcasting and why?
Yeah, I think there's a plaque up there. It says like episode 31 or something like that I was on uh of your show.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's 31. So I've been listening to podcast since like 2005. I've always pretty much been at the forefront of technology. Though I pretty much only listened to like Disney podcasts from 2005 to 2000 and well, actually to this day, pretty much. There's a few other podcasts I listen to, but mostly Disney based podcasts. So I fell in love with the idea when I back in 2014, I was leading my family's business. Is a very large business. I was groomed from a very young age to take it over. And I was putting out my first DJ album at the time, and it was Disney music matched up with hip hop instrumentals to tell the story of Pixar's Up. And that's a mouthful every time I say it. And so I was doing a bunch of podcasting interviews. People years earlier had told me I should have my own podcast, but I was like, I don't know, because I didn't know what I would talk about that I wouldn't get bored with or fall out of love with and not stay consistent with. And I've been creating content since like 96, 97 as a kid, writing about video games on my own blogs and things of that nature. So like I've always had the content creation bug. And shooting video, and I loved photography and all those things. But when it came to podcasting, it never really clicked for me what I could talk about and love and always want to talk about. So I'm flying down to Disney World with a friend of mine to run a race, and I was doing all these interviews to promote the album on Disney podcasts, and he's like, oh, have you heard of this other show where they interview entrepreneurs? I was like, oh yeah, no, I'd never heard of that before, because this was like 2014, and I never thought about like podcasting interviews as a thing. Like I was trying to get on roundtable discussions about Disney, not interview centric type shows. Yeah, and so it was like, okay. And then that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, all right, I'm going to create a show. It's going to be called the Dreamers Podcast to inspire other people to live their dreams. And it's like, I know a ton of people that live their dreams. I know a lot of people in business, but I was like, most of them are in the trucking industry. I just left that. And I'm not really trying to, piggyback off that. Want to go in a different direction with everything and inspire myself, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. So when the plane landed, I had a list of around 100 names of people that I mostly knew I had connections with or could have on the show because of that, or like dream, a few of them were dream guests, long shots. And the plane landed. I registered the domain name, the Twitter handle, Facebook page before we got to the rental car in Orlando, in MCO. So 2 weeks later, I right after that, I reached out to my friend Al Kessel. 2 weeks later, I had my first episode out. He was my first interview. I was supposed to have my friend BJ. Almost 9 years later, I'm still waiting for that interview. BJ, it's okay. You've been busy. I'm busy. It's a running joke at this point. It's like Matt thanking Matt Damon at the end of every episode for Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah. So anyway, 1 week later, I had the first episode out. Then I went to like 3 episodes a week, hit iTunes New and Noteworthy back when that was like a big thing to be on back in 2014, and eventually went on to win Business Podcast of the Year award, because over the time while I wrote up books, I changed the show into a more entrepreneur business focused show, because that's who I wanted to interview. That's what I was doing, and build a whole business around coaching other entrepreneurs and small business owners and all of that. So all of that has kind of culminated into a YouTube channel that has blown up for me pretty decently, very rapidly. And it's still doing the podcast to this day with interviews. though at this point those interviews are mostly Shark Tank, past Shark Tank entrepreneurs. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey with a lot of other things, from speaking all over the country, even at the United Nations, to just getting to help entrepreneurs literally around the world is absolutely awesome. And then the people that those entrepreneurs go on to help is just phenomenal to see and be a part of.
And the thing that he didn't mention, because there's a lot in there, right? The thing I do want to mention is Joe is also the founder of the Independent Podcasters Conference.
Oh yeah, that too. Because you can't just do one thing.
You can't. But I wanted you guys to hear his story, because it wasn't like it was pre-planned destiny or anything like that, where it like he pushed it off, and then a light bulb moment came, and this podcast that he had evolved into a few versions and now has become a YouTube channel. But Joe still works with creators, content creators, creatives, coaches, speakers, to help them with their podcast and make it a part of their business. I think, Joe, that some people don't understand still why podcasting can help them. They don't want to take a new medium. They're like, it's too much. When someone comes to you, a creative, let's say, and say, I'm trying to grow, they don't have a podcast. Is that something you would suggest to them?
I think it depends on your level of technical ability, right? Out of the gate. I always say, like, don't let the tech get in the way. If that's the case, like get to a place where it's like, okay, well, I use a USB microphone plugged into my computer and I record that way, or I'm just, I use Zoom. It doesn't have to be, it's not as complicated as it once was. Even in 2014, it was a lot less complicated than like the boys from WDW Today doing it back in 2004, 2005, that I used to listen to, for them to be all across the country. Well, they're mostly on the East Coast, but up and down the East Coast,
different places,
connecting together and having a way to record together and edit it and everything. There's so many more services, and it's such a, fruitful area of opportunity when it comes to like barriers to entry, right? Like Anchor is an opportunity to get to it. I mean, one of the things I always say is, like, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, if you're thinking about doing a video show, once you get the tech idea, part sorted out, just put in the reps, just keep doing it over and over and over and over again, right? Because it's not really about the results that you're going to necessarily get out of the beginning, but the results that you're getting personally, the development to be able to talk and put ideas together and be able to convey them in a video form or a podcasting form, and be able to get people to sign on, and you not sound robotic, and you not like, I was listening, my great aunt passed away recently, and I went back because I had her on my show back very early on. I think it was like in the, like, around episode 30 or something like that, to talk about my great uncle and his whole business ambitions. And listening to those, I actually, I mean, I guess because I edited it so much, I hate that word, edited it. I feel like I edited it so much that I sound robotic in it and very chopped up. And while at the time I felt like, oh, that makes me sound better, like, it actually is the opposite. It's very, very much the opposite. So much so that recently I put out a YouTube video where I went through and actually chopped up my audio, like my video and audio, and didn't like just let it fly the way that I talk. And sometimes I like porky pig it and say the same words 2 or 3 times unintentionally, but it didn't sound good. It didn't really sound that good. And one of my viewers, one of the people in my super community, actually called me out on it. It was like, hey, you don't need to edit your videos to save 2 or 3 minutes here. With the video is already like 18 minutes anyway. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I was running a test and trying something. There was a very specific reason why I did that specific video. But it's just funny to me because it's like, oh man, people pay so close attention to the way you speak that as soon as you start chopping it up, like across the whole video, they actually pick up on it, and it bothers them that it sounds that way.
I wonder,
So
I wonder if people overthink it, right? Just like the technology, they feel like perfectionism, like they're listening to people who have been podcasting for X number of years, right? More than them is enough for them to kind of be like, I can't get to that level. And I think one thing that you said, which was important, is get the repetitions in. Because we often hear these episodes of people, and to be clear, guys, Joe's episode 31, he's 200 plus episodes on his podcast.
400 approaching
400
5.
plus.
Yeah.
Right. Which, so he's got the repetitions in where it's not like episode 31. And I think people overthink it and think, I got to edit, I got to have professionals do it. It doesn't have to be that deep. And I think people get overwhelmed by that. Have you found in your coaching with helping other podcasters through the conference, through one-on-one interactions, groups here and there, what do you think the number one thing is holding people back from podcasting?
Probably listening to the sound of their own voice. When you talk about editing and how, we want to sound like we know what we're talking about. We feel like other people do it, but, sound like they know what they're talking about. And if we're getting started and we're going to do our own editing, I would argue, if I could get the first 2 years of my podcasting life back, I would not spend it editing every and space and everything out of it. I think it's important that you spend that time learning how to market, how to get people to listen to the show, get real feedback of that show, not based on the editing, and just, again, spend that time actually interviewing more people, or just talking on the mic, putting better scripts together, better podcast episode ideas together. Spend the time doing that. Editing is important, and knowing how to do it is important. And I wouldn't trade, some of the time that I spent doing it, but getting things to sound not robotic when this is just how people speak is tough. Now, where it's important that you understand how to edit is the dog starts barking, the phone starts ringing, there's a pause, there's a gap. We like, oh, I got, hold on, let me get up and like walk out of frame.
Yeah.
I should have just did it, but my legs are crossed and I'm not getting up. So, it's getting old sucks. So it's one of those things where it's important that you get those gaps cleaned up, but not necessarily take out every this is how people talk. Like, we had somebody actually, I just said like, right? Somebody in my comments said, oh, only like teenagers should be saying the word like. Okay, good for them. Good for you. I don't care. It's clearly not, I'm still doing something right here.
Yeah, because when you speak, right, it's just, it comes out, and there's something about you're going to find your voice. And I think so many people are worried about it, but it goes back to what Joe was saying. Get the repetitions in. If I look back at my first set of episodes, I'm like, I did not like the sound of my voice. And I just kind of pushed past that because I'm like, just keep doing it. And someone gave me the kindest compliment the other day and said, I have a voice for radio. Or they meant in a kind way. Okay. So don't.
Yeah. A voice for radio, not a face for radio.
Right. A voice for radio. So they meant it in a kind way. And I was like, that's so nice. Cause in my 8 years, have never thought that. 9 years of podcasting, I've never thought that. So it's crazy to me. Cause I'm like, but it was the repetitions. It was me. I think people being comfortable with it. And oftentimes you guys are aspiring podcasters are looking at veterans, people who have been doing it for time. And it's because they finally found their natural rhythm, their natural voice. And so what I want to ask you, though, is, let's say they get past that. Let's say they get past the tech. Let's say they find an idea. I think people don't realize the power of podcasting, especially for people with small businesses. What can podcasting do for someone who has a small business?
Yeah, two things: trust and relationship building, right? So one of the things that I did podcasting for at the beginning was to build a network outside of the world that I grew up in and knew, right? Because I didn't know a lot of I knew a very few entrepreneurs, right? I knew a lot of people in business. I just didn't know a lot of people that were doing their own thing,
Mhm.
or they were doing their own thing, but it still wasn't the same. It's not the same, right? Like trying to make it in the music world,
Yeah.
as a pianist, like my friend Jeff Langley is not the. I mean, yeah, in some ways he is an entrepreneur because he's kind of a freelancer that has done lots of different things and played in lots of different theaters and such. But it's not the same as trying to build a business. He's just building the brand and a brand to those theaters to enable him to be able to get in that way. But so it's like, okay, I knew a couple of people, but I needed to know more. And that's where the podcasting enabled me to have these conversations that I wouldn't have otherwise. I would have never, there's a lot of people that I would still remember I invited Patrick Roan on my show. And I was literally jumping up and down in my house because I had been reading him for years and I had no reason to reach out to him other than to like thank him for, for that. But I would have never been able to have a conversation with Patrick Roan. He
Mhm.
was in the minimalists. He was like in like one of the last people that they interviewed in that documentary, if you've ever seen that. But he ran a site called Minimal Mac that I've read for literally years. I have his books, highly respect him. And he was like, yeah, I'll come on. And then he went on to say that it was the most personal interview he had ever given. One of the greatest interviews he had ever given.
Wow.
And that was I think I want to say that was like in my number 30s, like early, very, very
Mhm.
early on.
As you're working.
Um, yeah, like as I'm, trying to put it all together, and one of my most downloaded episodes. So it's really that ability to have those conversations, ability to build relationships. A good friend of mine and now yours, Samantha Riley, she
Mhm.
came on as a guest. Somebody introduced us through as part of a podcasting guest package. And I can't say I've become friends with a lot of those people that came through those services, but she's one, and we're like best of friends, and we talk all the time, and we have a podcast together as well. And she's in Australia. I would have no reason to know her otherwise, right? So it's really, really like that, right? And then
Mhm.
on the customer end, it's all about trust, right? Being consistent. I mean, we were literally. I just read a comment to you before we came on, here recording, right? About somebody thanking me for being so consistent with putting out the content because of the fact that I'm always there and I'm engaging with those people, and I'm getting clients. I'm getting people to reach out to me. I just had somebody reach out to work with me like right before I came on here with you, that apparently they make like a LED mask. So it looks like sunglasses, but like
Wow.
but like here's the sunglass part, and then there's a mask that goes over it with like LEDs. It's supposed to like light up the collagen in your face or something like that. I don't know if they're trying to send me a message, a message that, Joe, you look tired and you look like you're 50. I'm only 35, but but if you could use this thing. I don't know. I always say I'm not a scientist, not a doctor, but uh, it's so much about that trust that
Yeah.
you can gain, and likewise, right? Like yesterday, one of my viewers who found me pretty much by accident, because they were looking for a specific Shark Tank pitch. We were Ava and Dom were playing Minecraft with her daughters.
Oh.
So this is their second play date that they got, because she said that how much it inspired her daughter, her older of her two daughters, to go and create things. And then I was like, well, let's have a conversation. So we met, and Ava met her daughter, and then they went and had a play date, and then
Yeah.
we've had our second play date. So and they're up in New York, up in I want to say the Bronx. I'm pretty sure the Bronx. So it's those kinds of relationships, and I've had tons of them over the years, that is only possible because you're willing to put yourself out there and gain that trust. Another example of this is, not to put somebody on blast, but my dad points out a certain. I'll leave it like this. My dad points out that there's a certain industry podcast
Mhm.
that is like, oh, he's doing it. Why aren't we why aren't we doing it in our end, on our end? And I'm like, because I have no interest in the industry in which we're talking about. So, I'm not going to be able to host it and do it justice, right? And that's that part of, and that word
Sense.
authentic
Right.
gets thrown around a lot, but realistically, if you're not interested, the people that are listening, like, do you
Will
like to
know.
listen to things that
Will know.
aren't that, that person's not that vested in, or is faking their
We will know.
enthusiasm about? Right? I mean, you have to have the knowledge of it as well. Not that I don't have the knowledge in, but I'm just not as enthusiastic about it.
But you could tell that, right? I mean, so you can have the knowledge and tell that someone's not interested. If you already know, it's going to be like that, where you're just forcing yourself to put on the appearance. People can tell. But there are people who, so like for your dad in that industry, you can hire someone, teach them, give them the material to do a podcast who can come off naturally, right? People hire other podcasters to host podcasts. People do it all the time, and it can be really well done. So just want to be clear, like, but if you don't have any interest, don't force yourself to podcast about something you have no interest. That's what you can tell the difference of.
So I would hesitate to say that is a good idea. You can hire somebody else, but you are giving your brand like, you're giving power to somebody else to a point where you might not be able to afford that. Like, if you actually get successful at what you've created, you actually have created a monster that you might not be able to just bring somebody else in to do it and have the same level of success. So they're either going to want more money, or they're going to maybe just walk. I mean, we saw this with The Hill, right, on YouTube. They have a channel where they just post like C-SPAN clips or whatever for like the longest time. All of a sudden they bring in oh god, I can't think of their name, Crystal and Sagar, and all of a sudden they're doing their morning show. They put out 4 or 5 clips a day in the morning, like 8-10 minute clips. They built such a following from 2020 to 2020, the middle of 2021, that they say, we're done and we're out of here. We're going to go start our own media company and go make our own videos. And then it happens, right? So it happened even, so now they've been successful. They're, so far with their independent media company, Linus Tech Tips. Linus started out working for NCIX, which is was a computer company up in Canada. And they started their own YouTube channel, and they had a bunch of different hosts. That's, to me, I think that's the better way of doing it, because then you can, you can always slot somebody else in, as long as you have like an old face to be able to like put to it. But he ended up leaving and starting his own channel, and it became one of the biggest, like, if not the biggest,
that's a great point.
channel on YouTube.
That's a great point. I mean, I think if you are a creator, coach, speaker of your own, right? I think hiring a host to do your podcast is good. It makes sense for larger companies, like NPR does it, right? Other companies do it. Our friend Philip Lanos, Phil hosts podcasts for another company. They've hired him to do that, and he does the interviews because he has that experience. It's his thing. That makes sense. But if you want, I think Joe makes a wonderful point. I just want to kind of double down on and kind of correct myself at the same time. Your podcast is an extension of you and your brand. And so people need to hear and see from you and learn from you and your brand. And so think it's important to be natural about that, because if you bring somebody else on, then really, are they learning more about you? Why would somebody want to do business with you, hire you as a speaker, hire you as a coach, buy your products or anything if they don't know you? Is that kind of the idea, Joe, is like kind of putting yourself out there?
Yeah. So I would use the money to hire an editor, to hire somebody. If you're going to do video, you definitely might want to edit that video down a little bit, depending on what you're trying to accomplish with that video. I would hire a camera person. I would hire, like, there's other ways to spend the money than hosting it. I would look at hosting it myself, unless we were talking about a big established brand, like. But even then, like, I still think that it's easier. Even a writer, if you want to have somebody write the episodes or come up with the ideas for the episode, and then you just show up and do it. Like, I mean, and you can find it's not impossible to take yourself out of the picture, right? Like one of the examples I just gave, Linus from Linus Tech Tips, right? He has been steadily trying to reduce his dependency on being in every single video, and he's been doing it over the course of literally years. So, what used to be, Linus 7 days a week has become, went to like Linus 6 days a week with one episode with a different person, and then 5 days a week and 4 days a week. And now it's Linus doing the ad reads sometimes in the beginning or the end of the video, but it's a whole different person. And sometimes you'll go 3, 4, 5 days without seeing a video with Linus in it, except for the ad reads where he's sitting down and doing it. But that's really on the production side. I mean, we're talking about getting so big at that point where it's like literally it's bigger than him,
so
right?
That's a great point. I just want to kind of hold on that is he built his brand. He built his reputation.
He earned the right to be able to not be in his videos and me still click on them.
And the thing is, if you're listening and watching this and you're a new coach, creator, speaker, whatever, right? You have to make that establishment. You have to put in the repetitions, as Joe said, to get to that point. And so I don't want you to overthink everything that's involved in this. Think about just podcasting. Think about the fact that podcasting can bring in new leads for you. It can bring in like opportunities. As Joe was saying, he got clients and customers who found him through podcasting, who can get, hey, I've had people who are like, hey, would you come and speak to this? Because we heard your podcast. We've developed it, right? In a day and age where it's hard to get to know someone, I feel like podcasting is another way for brands to learn more about you and who you are.
Yeah.
Like a visual medium for a resume of sorts.
Well, if visual or audio, it's also, I mean, it proves consistency, right? If you're consistent, you don't have to, I would say, like, pick one thing, right? So you don't have to be amazing at every single social media platform that's out there. Pick one that speaks to you, speaks to the people that you're trying to reach, and then leverage that as much as possible. So I'll like with this, right? When you're talking, like when people ask the question, well, do I podcast? Do I do YouTube? What should I do if I'm going to invest the time and energy? I mean, well, audio goes hand in hand with video. You need great audio, or you can get away with bad video, but the audio's got to sound good, or people's ears are going to hurt. Eyes, they'll just minimize the video or whatever. But the way I always say it is like this. YouTube is an island, and it already has like sports stadiums, it has hotels, it has people living there, it has people, all kinds of shops and everything, skyscrapers. It's a whole like country going on in YouTube with that amount of people that are there. When it comes to podcasting, you very much are pulling the dirt, pulling the sand out of the ocean to make an island by scratch, by hand, before we can even start talking about let's get huts on this island so that and plant trees on this island so that we can build the huts so that we can have people even come and maybe vacation there once in a blue moon and listening to your podcast, right? You have to build it from the ground up. The platforms that are out there to help you get discovered are at best. You really have to do everything you can. Having your own website helps get that point across, so that like Google as a platform can get, people searching towards your content. And that's where like the audio or the podcast or video ideas, have to be solid, that based on like actual, what are people looking for, right? So unless you already have an audience, right? So then it's like, oh, like we can, if I have an audience, then I might already have some money and I can like get things built faster to build my own island. But like, if you go to YouTube, it's like, well, you're just a number basically in a long line of other people who are hoping to be able to establish, a box on the side of the street for you to live in, to be able to work your way up to like, ooh, I can afford an apartment that is the size of a shoebox, like a little bigger than the shoebox I was living in outside on the street, right? And working your way up that ladder. So there's advantages to both, right? YouTube is always looking to help their audience stay on the platform versus, when it comes to podcasting, it's really up to you to like bring that audience there as much as possible so you can build up your own island. And if you can, it's awesome. And if you're like somebody, to go back to another example, I mean, I'm saying Linus, but like my Linus Tech Tips bottle is like right here, right? Literally, their whole call to action, other than their sponsors, was go to our website. And our website wasn't even a website for up until just recently, like in the last like year or two. It was just a message board. So cultivating their own community island off of YouTube, so that in case YouTube went away, they had their own. Plus, he's also made his own video distribution service called Floatplane, which is not really a competitor to YouTube, but it's more of a competitor, I would say, to like Patreon in some ways than to YouTube. But it's an opportunity for them to be able to say, if YouTube goes out tomorrow, for them to just be like, oh, well, we have our podcast, but that's only a weekly podcast that they do like live streamed. But they also have their website and their RSS feeds on top of their own videos platform to be able to serve the video, start serving the videos up that way. I
think the thing to keep in mind, guys, is you don't have to do all the things as Joe said, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm trying to show you like that this is, there is so many things, but don't get bogged down with trying to compare yourself to those other people.
Because they've been doing it.
Right. They've been doing it for like literally like a decade.
The thing is, I like this recording that you're watching on YouTube was recorded in Zoom. We recorded it in Zoom. I'm capturing the audio separately, but I have it if I want to use it. One of the things I think early in my podcasting journey, because down in 2013, 14, it wasn't as easy to record video and audio and get it clear. And people were like, focus on the audio. And for the first 100 episodes, that's what I did, 120 or something. I did was just focus on the audio. I wish I had recorded the video, even if I never did anything with it.
Yeah.
Just for the behind the scenes. But if you're doing a recording in Zoom or one of these other new up and coming platforms that record video and audio, then just save it, but don't use it till you need to, right? A lot of the video we use on my podcast are used for promotion and marketing. It's not really intended for, our focus is the audio of the podcast. That's where we want you to be. So that is something I just want to, emphasize again what Joe was saying. Don't try to do all the things, but if you have a way of doing both and just saving one, focus on the audio, because Joe's right. Nobody wants bad audio. People will remember you for bad audio. They will cut. Like, I can't listen to this. Turn it off. Right. So Joe's episode was actually number 25. That's why I wanted to check.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was still early. Like, I find early to be defined as before my first 50 episodes. That's still early. But it was an amazing episode, and we're going to have him back on the show later. But and I'm telling you that now, Joe, by the way.
Okay. Of course I'll be there.
I didn't even say yes. But Joe, what would you tell aspiring entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out, is this the thing? What would you tell them as one last thing to kind of wrap that up?
I think any opportunity you can have to put yourself in front of people self-identify with people with faces. It's one of the reasons why in my videos, I harp so much on, I want to see faces when I go to the website. I want to be able to self-identify with the people there. There's nothing more powerful than your voice and their, to their ears, right? Like they always say, like from your lips to God's ears. Well, in this case, it's from your lips to your listener, potential customers' ears. Mm-hmm. And it's a long game. This is not, look, when I started, I very much thought like, okay, in like 6 months, there's going to be this big sack of money coming through my screen because I'm just going to be getting so many sponsors. And I had success out of the gate, right? Like all of a sudden I went from like no downloads to like 2,000 downloads to 10,000 downloads in the second month. 10,000 dollars in the second month at a time where most people I knew never even heard the word podcast before, right? So, and it was before Serial and it was before all these other things. So it's something that is it's very much a long game, and you can have success out of the gate with it. And there's plenty of examples of that. I mean, what's it? Heather Parody and Rich Cardona, they started a podcast they've all both been in podcasting for a while, but they started a podcast all about NFTs, and like they hit 500,000 downloads in like 6 months. But that doesn't mean that you're going to hit that. The important part there is that they hit upon a topic that was not being serviced in that medium at the time. And not that you should look and say, oh, there's already three other shows that do this thing, maybe I shouldn't do it. Your voice, your personality, your experience, as long as you're bringing that through to the people, you're going to have people that don't like it, but you're going to have people that do like it and want to hear more, want to stick around, and want to be, to learn with you, alongside you, by you, whatever other words that need to be fit there. There's people that are going to want to come along for that journey. So the best way for you to be able to do that, even if you don't really know what the topic is going to be or how you're going to hone it in, or you haven't figured out who your avatar is, who you're trying to ideally reach with that show, and how that's going to translate into your business. Because I think there's an easy way to get disconnected there, as far as like, oh, we have the show, but the people listening to the show aren't necessarily the people that are supposed to be listening to the show, because the content isn't quite matched up with what those people want to learn or hear about it. It's important that you get the reps in. So, they say on YouTube, like, your first 100 videos are going to be total poop. And that's probably true, right? I mean, but the quicker you get those 100 videos done is the quicker you get to the next 100 videos that aren't poop, right? And are different and are better. So to me, I think if you really want to enable people to see a less filtered version of you, of your business. I mean, with Instagram and social media, it's very much filtered. Even when people are sharing the losses or the negative comments like I do, it's still filtered to a certain extent, because like I'm choosing which negative comments to put out there. I'm choosing which positive ones, which wins to put out there. When it comes to podcasting, it can be edited, but it's just another shade of sharing your life. And then an example of that is I'm doing these Shark Tank biz coach reacts videos. You're seeing me inside the window in which you're seeing me right now, right? And it's all shot in real time, and there's very little to no editing with it, which is awesome. I don't want to spend my time editing anyway. I could, but I just don't want to. Right. But we've been doing these reviews of these Shark Tank products, and I've been including my kids and my wife with them, and we do them in the kitchen. So it's giving another angle of the story of the overall picture. It's still filtered, obviously, because like you're living it through the lens, seeing it through the lens. Yeah, it's just something else to show like that there's more to it than just these four walls that I'm sitting inside. So what it does is it enables the people that really care to see into that world a little bit more and a little bit more, and be a little more intrigued, and indebts them to you to want to keep coming back and keep getting more.
100%. Guys, be sure to follow Super Joe Pardo. His information's in the description below. If you have questions about podcasting, Ant and I have put together an FAQ private feed that you can find also linked below, podcasterhq.net/101, where we answer some of the questions that you may be thinking as you're trying to figure out, should I podcast? And so we take a stab at that. And if you find a question that isn't answered, reach out to us. We're happy to answer and add it to the queue. So till then, Joe, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your background. Guys, check out his YouTube channel, link below as well. You're going to learn a lot. I still learn a lot from Joe and his entrepreneurial experience, his podcast experience. It's amazing.
Thank you, Amy.
What fun.
Yes.